everyone, this is Denise of Something Beautiful Handcrafts, and so I've been looking at my analytics, which I almost never do, and it seems that surprisingly enough, there were a lot of views uh, on the circular sock knitting machine video, and basically, I don't make a lot of sock machine videos, pretty much because I'm a beginner, and I kind of figured I didn't really have much to offer in the way of videos. But since they seem to have gotten a lot of watch, I figured maybe I'll just kind of make another one so you can see where I'm at right now. And so I haven't done any like new and special techniques to show you. I haven't really gotten that far. Pretty much I went from getting the machine to making a couple dozen socks for someone. So most of my time occupied on the machine is making pairs of the same sock over and over and over again. So no new techniques yet to show you. However, I have made a fingerless glove with a thumb hole, and so at some point I will make that sock video on a video. No, I'm sorry, make that mitt on a video. Also, I have learned to use and kind of fixed my ribber since I made the knee-high, well, so actually they're more like thigh-high socks. And so I'll probably make a second pair of those. I want to keep in mind, though, that there wasn't really, you know what, I don't know if I really want to say this the way I'm going to say it, but I have not seen any socks or stockings that were ribbed for historical purposes, depending on how far back you go. So although I noticed that the instructions for making a sock on the sock machines in the 1800s has not really changed, I don't recall there being any ribbers in that time frame. So when I made those thigh-high socks, they were historically appropriate, basically, because they're just plain socks with garters. So if I make a rib version, it'll be a little different. And at that point, I just wanted to kind of make a sort of historical version. Okay, anyway, I am about to put on my ribber to start the second sock. Okay, let's talk about sock yarn. I gotta pull this from down here and make sure I don't get anything caught. Okay, here are the socks I'm working on. These socks are with a yarn from alpacamom.com. It starts a little balled up. I will have a picture where you can see it kind of stretched out. Now, this sock is a merino, 40% alpaca, 40% merino, and what does that leave me? 20% nylon blend. And these are from Julie's Alpacas. She has it milled, and then she hand dyes the yarn and sends it to me. So this is what I'm working on. There's a couple different colorways down there, and I'm making socks for men and women in a variety of sizes. When I first started making socks for Julie, I was pretty obsessed about my sock count and yada, yada, yada. But really, when you think about it, it doesn't actually matter when the sock comes off the sock machine if I'm telling you what size, because I'm going to wash it. Once it's full, it's going to be a little different size than what I'm measuring off the machine. So basically what I'm doing now, especially since I've been doing this for a while, is I know what my gauge is. I know what my stitch per inch is, and I'm cranking different amounts of rows to make different sizes. And then once Julie washes them and blocks them, it's up to her to determine by measuring the distance between the heel and the toe what the actual size is. So at this point, I can't say to you, well, this is going to be a size 8 sock, or this is going to be a size. And technically I could, because I have a chart now of over about 100 or so more socks. And I could pretty much tell you at this gauge how many rows I cranked out, what the approximate even after washing should be. But I really don't need to determine that at this very point. I only need to worry about that when I am making specific socks for a specific person and they need it to fit a specific way. In this case, this is just a range of socks, and whoever buys these from Julie is going to have to get the measurements or give her the measurements and she'll size them however she decides to size them based on what happens after they're full, how aggressively they're full. Oh, one quick note. I was talking to Julie about this too, is that this is not a super wash sock. It's regular alpaca, regular merino. It's got some nylon. So this particular sock is eventually going to felt. I can't really tell you how long it's going to take, but it's going to felt. It's not going to be as felt resistant as these super wash socks. So when you are buying yarn from the store, like the Peyton's yarn and the Gia and I forgot what the other one is, Super Garn. I can't remember what it is. Anyway, when you're buying the commercial sock yarn, you're dealing with super wash yarn. And there are some things you can do to it that you cannot do from local mill yarn or from hand spun sock yarn. Of course, unless you're using one of the down braids. You can get merino sock yarn. If you want a heart wearing sock, I don't advise it, but your mileage may vary. Either still, you can still get a merino sock yarn, and you can get a super wash merino sock yarn, so that may make your things last longer. But when you're dealing with a mill spun or a hand spun, and you want a sock that's going to wear longer, if you care about that kind of thing, because some people don't, then you want to choose a breed that is known for its durability, like the breeds that are referred to as nature's superwash, the down breeds. They are felt resistant. Not going to say they won't felt, but under most circumstances, I have yet to have anything Shoutout felt on me. Okay, and I can get pretty rough with socks because I pretty much wear them in tennis shoes or boots. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Choose your sock blends carefully based on what it is you plan on doing with that sock and the longevity of that sock. All right, so anyway, here we are. And I want to put the river on. Let me tell you a little something about the river. With a preface that I am not bad-mouthing anybody. It might sound a little critical what I'm saying, but it just is what it is. Okay, so I have a New Zealand auto knitter, NZAK for short, and this one is the ultimate. I think it's the ultimate one. I think it's the ultimate one, ultimate two. I think this is the ultimate one. And I have been having problems with my river. It makes its guest appearance over here. And what needed to be done eventually, what I wound up doing, is I had to take apart. Do I really want to say I took apart the tappet plate? I took some pieces off the tappet plate, is what I want to tell you. I took the in and out switch out because I never could get the in and out switch to move. I mean, it was just like really stiff. I was like breaking off fingernails trying to get this thing to move. Okay. So I tried oiling it heavy. That really didn't work. So what I did is I just pulled it out. Okay. Pushed it back in, oiled it around it. And that kind of made it okay, but it was jamming. It never was very smooth. It always would catch, but really it just got into a bind. So I took it apart. I turned it over. And on the switch part of the tappet plate were some burrs, lots of burrs across the top. So I'm assuming that as the needle the needle head went in through here, it ground across the top of there and caught because it didn't smoothly go across. So I popped this out and ground it down flat. So now it's flush with the grooves in the tappet plate. And then when I got about halfway at the right before the dog leg at the turn, it would stick again. So eventually what I had to do is take the Dremel, run it across the switch, through to widen those grooves and widen that corner or that bend down there and just completely groove it out. And now I have a really nice smooth ribber. So it doesn't really take me a lot long to set up the ribber. Probably takes more to set up the cylinder than as a ribber. So I'm going to set up the cylinder. I thought I had this all in my head, right? So hopefully we'll see how this goes. In order to put the ribber on and for it to turn and not hit the needles, I have to put it like in the right spot because there's just a little bit of give here and the dial is going to shift a bit. And if I don't seat it quite right, it's going to rub against the needle. So I'm almost positive this was a needle to move. So I'm just going to lift this needle, lift the stitch off there, put it on this needle. And I'm going to do a 1x1 rib. I'm going to do a 1x1 rib, mostly because I haven't gotten to the E-wrap yet, which I need to brush up on. And so I need a salvage edge on my sock that's not going to come apart. My advice would be to do a 1x1 rib and then, what was it? To take the needles out, run a row, needles out of work, run a row, and then go ahead and set it for a 3x1 rib. Or you could E-wrap, okay? And maybe that's what I'll do. Well, not the E-wrap, but the 1x1. So I'm going to go all the way around the cylinder and go ahead and change these out because the 1x1 rib it's effective for not having your salvage unwrap at the top, but it doesn't give you a pretty salvage. And I guess it depends on how you feel about how it looks. Let me show you real quick. I gotta get the bag here. I put a picture up on Instagram, and here's the mock rib. And I think this is the rib. Yes. Okay, so this is the mock rib. Perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with the mock rib. But I just wanted a rib because I like to be able to use my machine. So I don't want to be afraid of the ribber. I want to be able to use it. Here it is. Here is the rib. And I should have put my screen mirroring on so I can see how this looks. I'm assuming you can see it. If I play back the video again during editing and I find out you can't see it, I'll put another picture down below this so you'll have a better picture. I still might do that. Okay, so there you go. You got the 3x1 mock rib and the 3x1 rib. True rib, which is pretty cool. Then there is the 1x1 true rib, which is what you just saw, which makes it look a whole lot tighter. And I actually kind of like that a lot better. So like I said, I could do the wrap so that my salvage is different and I can use the 3x1 rib, but I really like that. And I could do that 1x1 rib and then go into that 3x1 rib. I just really like the 1x1 rib. So we'll see. Maybe I'll stick with it. Maybe I won't. I'm going to put these two back together. I'm going to try not to bump the camera too much. There's a serious lack of space happening here. I don't know where this goes. Oh, I hate when that happens. It's lost its mate somewhere. And that just gets terribly confusing. Or else I seriously did this wrong and I need to figure it out. Okay, no, we're good. This one's mate. And this one needs a second mate. So I'm making a mate for this one. That's still 30. All right, anyway, so I'm going to go all the way around, which you don't really need to see on camera, or these things get really long if I do that, which is why I edit the way I edit, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in between the edits and between the spinning setups and all that kind of stuff. Would be a class length long. It'd be a little mini seminar if I actually walked you through every tiny step, which is why it's so important to put your questions in the comment section, because then I can answer those questions that I did not cover in the video because I thought it would make the video too long. Sometimes I just have to make separate videos. Okay, so I think you see where I'm going with this. So I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to crank the waste yarn around once or twice or so. Then I'm going to seat the ribber on top of here. And I was doing this a couple different ways. First time what I was doing was when I got to the end of the waste yarn, I was tying the yarn onto the waste yarn and pulling it through, because it's kind of hard to pull it through when the ribber is on. I just have a hard time doing that. The second way I did it was I tried to shove it down there when the ribber is on, and that's definitely not the way to go. And then the third way I did it is right before I got to the place where the ribbing was going to start, which is why I'm starting over here and not here, which I've done on my previous videos because I just can't see down here. I laid it next to here and held it down at the bottom, right below the belt, the weight. And so that way it was nice and snug, but it doesn't really leave me any place to tie the waste yarn. So at least if I tied it on as it went down, I could pull the waste yarn down, and that would also pull the working yarn in. There's probably a much more efficient way to do that. I just need to look at somebody else's video and see how they're putting on it. And then again, maybe not. Maybe it's just one of those little clumsy things that happens when you're working. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at this point, and then I'll jump you to the place where I am setting the working yarn in and starting at least to the point where I'm setting the working yarn in. Then I'm going to put the ribber on, because I think it's really important that you watch how I put this ribber on. Sometimes it's really clumsy. Sometimes it just goes on perfect. It just depends. But you'll get a chance to see in a little while. Just want to stop and give a shout out to my friend Allison Barnes. She's a fellow German Shepherd breeder and enthusiast. And she's also a distributor for a line called Neora. Now, the products featured are cruelty-free, sulfate-free, paraben-free, gluten-free, formaldehyde-free, completely vegan, and good for color-treated hair. So if you're looking for a source for a very clean skin and hair product, go ahead and look up Allison. I'll have the link to her website where you can purchase from her down in the description below. All right, so I'm putting the ribber on now, making sure I got this lock thing in the right spot. Gonna turn it. Okay, there we go. Those look lined up pretty well. I'm gonna go ahead and put the ribber. Yeah, do I want to do that? Let's go ahead and make sure it's seated all the way down. There we go. That's good. And I'm gonna go ahead and put it in work, because I find that it takes a while to get in work. It takes about, I'd say maybe 4 needles or so before it gets in work. So I'm just going to run this along here. Oh, you know what? You want to make sure all your latches are open, because when I take my needles out of work, because it does take like 4 needles to go out of work, there are some of the latches I close. I used to remove the needles, and that made it easier to lift off. But now that I have a little better understanding of the ribber, I just close my latches. And maybe, hopefully, one day when I have a little more understanding of the ribber, I'll have it down to a procedure to know exactly how many needles it'll take before it goes out of work. Okay, so I'm going to restart this. All right, so Yeah, you'll see why I went ahead and moved the yarn to over there, because it's something I can actually see. Okay, so now I'm going to bring this over here, put this in the yarn guide. I want to be careful too, because I don't want to, while I'm fidgeting around with it, I don't want to pull it out. Okay, so as far as I can tell, this is pretty good to go. Got to make sure all your needles are open. That is like the number one cause of issue, is that you find out later that there's a latch that's not open, which is always a bummer. Though when I take the rubber off, I can fix that by hand. It's just a pain in the neck. So it's better to prevent it than to try to fix it. Okay, it looks good so far. I'm going to take these off. So I think I started over here, and 1, 2, 3 needles before where I wanted to start, it started. So that's what I said about 4 needles. This latch needs to be up. And I always crank around slowly the first couple rows to make sure I have going on what it is I actually want to go on. This is one of those that caught. Okay, so far, as far as I can tell, so good. Oh, nope, not so good. These were not open and they didn't catch. I thought they were open and they're not. So, okay, so now these ones are back out again. They didn't catch. Or else I didn't push them down far enough. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I can obviously see the stitch right here. I'm just going to lift it up, put it on the needle, which sometimes is easier said than done. Work better if I had a different hook. I haven't been able to find that hook. Oh, that one just does not want to cooperate. Sometimes you got to get a little handsy. There is another hook that I initially had, more curved, much better than this. And one day it fell off the floor. For the life of me, I have not seen that thing since. I mean, I have moved. I feel like I've moved mountains. There's not like a lot of space in this room. But I can't seem to find it. Okay, so let's look around here. That one's got one. Okay, that looks right. This is kind of those need to know now. It's much harder to do this when you've messed up and you've got 2 or 3 underneath the ribber. Oh, see, I've got one right here. Now, you are not going to do that to me, buddy. Sometimes I just think these things have I don't know, because I'm pretty sure that if you go back on the video, you'll see I flipped that latch. Got one right here. Sometimes I do this and it goes off without a hitch. And sometimes I'm like, are you serious? I want to tell you, like, real cheery, like, this is just going to get better. Don't worry. But I don't know. It might just be a thing. It might be my machine. There's a lot of variables here. What I can tell you is that I can use this rubber. So even if I have to kind of fuddy-duddy a couple times to get it going, it's going to get going. Okay, so this looks good. So now what I'm going to do is start to crank. I'm telling you, when this thing is good, it's good. When it's not good, hello, Dolly. Like, it's doing some thing right here, and I don't know what's happening. Okay, there we go. The yarn was just kind of splitty, and it caught there. All right, looking again. All righty. I got my counter on, magnetic counter over there. And yeah, this is a lot better. Before it was kind of grindy. Till I had Dremel Wars, and I won. I'm almost thinking I don't have enough weight on this. When I first got the instructions, it said that the normal knitting was 2 weights, rubber was 3. But it seemed like I had a problem with the rubber in 3. But now that I've ground down the rubber, maybe I'll go get that extra weight, put it on there, and see what happens now. So I'm at 12. And everything is going peachy keen. You have to stay on top of this. I watch the rubber like an eagle. When I'm just knitting stockinette, I kind of fly. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Okay, so here's what happens, right? I do 29, right? Then I'm going to start replacing needles. There's more than one way to do this. Like, there's more than one way to do everything. Okay, first of all, I need to get the needles, well, the V-cam past here, so I can put the needle. This is where I started. This is where I want to start at. I've seen it where you lift the needle out, wrap it on here, put it back. And that's cool, but I found that kind of fiddly myself. So what I have been doing is lifting the stitch off and putting it onto the needle, which is also kind of fiddly. It really depends on what direction I'm sitting. And there's never really room in this room for me to move around the sock machine. So I have to stand up and lean over, and that's where things get complicated. All right, like I said, I'm going to close this latch because I like to think I'm going to remember to switch out when we get here, but I might not, and it still might catch. So the guarantee it's not going to catch. I'm just going to flip that latch. Okay, so of course I cannot put these needles down because the V-cam is in the way. So I'm going to crank this thing around. Now here's the thing. I could crank it all the way around to this position, but this arm right here where the rubber sits, I'm not sure what it's called, kind of gets in the way. It's kind of hard to work with these needles that are right here. So instead of trying to reach in between those needles, I'm just going to inch this thing around. And I got to tell you too, the stopping and starting, see, I took it too far past talking. The stopping and starting makes things complicated too. See how it's hard to put that needle down in there now? The stopping and starting makes things hard too because the yarn sometimes snags. and then this arm moves when I'm moving around it, and it jerks away from you, right? Because you bump into it, and then this shifts, and then a needle drops. And I wish like I could take this gear thing off. Maybe I can take it off so that I cannot bump into this thing. That's just so irritating where you got this all together, and then you go to move, or you're moving with your arm here and you bump into the crank, and bam, stuff comes off, and now you've got this hot mess that you need to fix. Irritating. This is one of the ones with the splitty yarn, and it doesn't want to come off. This needle does not want to come off. Okay, good, got you. Okay, so I'm going to do this all the way around, and I'm just going to take these off the ribber and replace them onto the cylinder needle. Then after I do that, I'm going to crank the cylinder needle once around. Then I'm going to change yarns. So I will get back to you after I've put in all the cylinder needles and I am lifting the ribber off. So pretty much if I did this right, I should just be able to lift this off and go on my life. So here it is. There we go. That's the smoothest that's ever lifted off before. Okay, so before I continue cranking, I'm going to have a look at this. Make sure all the latches are open. And let's go ahead and bring it around. And of course, it's too close to the camera, so it wants to have a problem. All right, so this is my starting point right here. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this yarn. For the life of me, I have no idea what I did with scissors. Oh, there they are. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Let's cut this here. Make sure I leave a little extra to weave in, good ends. And that one is done. Second color. Going to crank 40 rows of this. Lay that down in there. I'm just going to overlap them. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with them as I get started. Let me go ahead and do the reset. Okay. Still taking this really slowly. Make sure you leave enough tail when you do that. There's going to be a little uptake as you move, so I'm going to make sure you leave extra tail for that. Okay, so I did not get the one inside the other. I hate when that happens. I'm going to have to do something about that, or you're going to have a gap open up. I'm actually just going to tie them together. I'm pretty sure there are like a couple different ways to join this. I can definitely tell you, you're not ever going to notice that knot. Just not going to notice it. You just have to believe me on that one. But like I said, there's probably better ways to do that. But that's how I'm doing it right now. Okay, so I'm going to overlap this one, weave it back and forth, and I'm going to knit it into the stitches. Okay, so come around. Normally that would be smoother, but of course the tripod's in the way for the camera, so it's not quite as smooth as I'd like. Okay, so it just goes ahead and knits those in. Beautiful. Then I'm going to take this last part and wrap it in the back in the other direction to secure it. Then when it comes time, I'll just have a little teeny bit that I'll tuck under, weave in. Okay, got that one. And let me get this one. If it looks a little awkward, well, it is kind of awkward with the camera tripod there. but I assure you it's not as awkward as it looks. And you know what? I have to make sure I say that sometimes because I'm doing something on camera and someone will say, well, that looks awkward the way you're doing that. You could do it this way. And basically, it just really does look awkward because the camera's like less than a foot away from the machine, and it's only like an inch, maybe two away from the crank. So yeah, it is kind of awkward. I might eventually get one of those uh, tripods that you set on the desk, and it can like over top of me like that. But that also means I have to have a desk close by wherever it is I'm filming, which is not particularly convenient for outside locations. So there's always a lot of considerations. If I ever become a big YouTuber, I'll spend big YouTuber money and get a big YouTuber setup. But for the most part, this is how it's going for now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move the weights down here. I've got the weight left over from the toe, and I've got the stem weight on here. I'm going to slide it up over top of that first sock. And I'm just going to go ahead and crank the 40 out. Then I'll be ready to set up for the heel. Now, at some point, I really do need to try the Dutch heel or try a different heel. But right now, I'm really comfortable with the short row heels. They don't bother me at all to do them. It's the same way I knit when I knit with needles. And so it makes perfect sense to me. And I find it really quick and easy. But of course, you do want to be flexible. So I like flexibility. So at some point, I will try a different heel. Just not for this set of socks. From here, the rest of the sock is straightforward. I've already done a video where I showed you how I did my heels. It's pretty much the short row heel where I put a needle up, I wrap that needle, I turn, I wrap a needle on this side, and then lift the next needle, wrap, turn, basically that's how it works. If you actually really want to see that, there's some really good videos. You can go back to my other videos and see the wrap and turn. Okay, so after that, I am cranking 50 rows for the foot, and then I am joining the yarn again and making the toe, which I make the same way as the heel. And that pretty much ends the sock. So I'm going to stop here because everything else I've already done on the other videos. And that's it. I have quite a few skeins of this to go. And so hopefully, I want to say I'll be done by mid-September. Maybe earlier, depends on how my free time works out. Sometimes I can do, like 10 pairs of socks a day if I have that kind of sitting down time. Sometimes I have other things to do. So if I get 2 or 3 pairs a day done, that's great. But at any rate, I have 2 projects that I want to get done for the fall. I want to make a set of fingerless gloves, which I've done before, but I didn't record that. And this time I want to add a lace motif to the fingerless glove. So that would be nice. And I actually want to complete a pair of mittens. So when I get to that stage in a couple of weeks, then I'll make sure to do those videos. I just want to thank you for watching. Thanks to all my subscribers. If you're not a subscriber, click that subscriber button and click the notification bell. Also, like this video and comment if you have anything that you would like to see. I'd like to be able to get back to some type of some more historical knitting and things like that. I'm not really knitting right now because of the tendonitis, so I'm pretty much focusing any of that on just doing some spinning. I have an article that's coming out in Ply Magazine, so I'm spinning for that, trying to not overuse my hands. But at some point I'd like to get back to the knitting and spinning for the videos, and mostly the historical spinning. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.